Biss is back and it's gonna crash right into you like a runaway train. You might say it will consume you and you can't walk away. For those of you who remember the Barraki ad, you might remember that song that I am paraphrasing there. This episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series is all about the Barraki, or at least using some of those Barraki pieces in some interesting ways, but also focusing on some of the characters that were the Barraki from the Bionicle story. And you might be sitting here and you'll be like, what's a Barraki? Well, let's head on over to Biosector and let's read a little bit of the description about who the Barraki are. The Barraki are an allegiance of warlords comprised of Pridak, Kalma, Mantax, Carapaw, Taradox, and Elec, once leaders of the League of Six Kingdoms. Not 5, but 6. They were at one point banished to the pit, where they were transformed into abnormal creatures by the mutagen contained in the water. So that's kind of a really in-universe description of what they are. For the more simplified description, they were the main villains of the 2007 Bionicle storyline, which took place underwater. They were the creeps from the deep, as they're called. It was basically Bionicle's underwater theme, and these guys were the bad guys, and they were pretty awesome. Ironically too, I might be wrong here, but I think they were also the very first Bionicle wave which featured all of the sort of main 6 of them actually having entirely different designs for each one. Ironically, whenever we bought Bionicles, we just decided to buy the exact same toy in 6 different colors with slight variations on weapons and masks and a few other things. But no, these guys were different. And that was actually really cool, you know. Not to diminish the other toys though, you know, they were just as cool even though they were very, very similar. But the Barraki were very unique in that sense. So lots to love about these Barraki guys. Let's talk about some mock versions of them. The first one we've got is by Lord Oblivion, otherwise known as Tony, eh? Here's Tony, eh? And here's a mock called Mantax, eh? And this is pretty awesome. One of the coolest things you can do if you're revamping one of the Barraki sets or just using some of their pieces is to get one of the original sets and just make him big, large, and in charge. It's always something fun to do. And heck, you know, we take a look at Mantax, the original Mantax set here. He was actually pretty slim. I mean, look at those upper arms. He doesn't even have any armor on those. Have you heard of Arm Day, Mantax? Have you been working out at all? Apparently not. But he's been working out when Lord Oblivion remakes him and makes him big, buff, and strong. Basically a titan. This thing looks pretty large. This is pretty awesome. I like the fact that this revamp here has kept a lot of the basic ideas from Mantax, and just kind of improving on them. So, you know, we take a look at the weapon. My chair is so squeaky. I'm sure you always hear this. I need to get a new chair. Going back to the mock. You take a look at Mantax and the set, that is. He has the squid launcher and he has his claws. And Lord Oblivion has, for the most part, kept those as well, but made them way cooler. And then we take a look at the shoulders, basically the same thing, and the head. You really don't need to improve on those Barraki heads. Those were some stellar, high-quality masks that they had. I guess they weren't really masks in the strict sense. I don't think they had mask powers. I could be wrong there, but I don't think they were. Still, they were really nice pieces. They looked great. Often had that kind of marble texture to them. They're awesome. Awesome parts. So if you are looking for some nice stimulus for a cool like face design, Barraki headpieces might be the place to look. But yeah, I like that. If you are revamping something, maybe do that. Keep the basic ideas and expand on them in some way. Whether it's something as simple as the original Mantax had 2 claws, and now you give him 3. Or you take that squid launcher and you make it way cooler with tentacles and trans-colored pieces and no squids. And no squid launchers as well, because I speak from experience when I say those squid launchers, they were difficult to fire. They were probably my least favorite of the Bionicle launcher pieces. Maybe you will agree with me, maybe you will disagree with me, who knows, but not a fan of those. But a big fan of how Lord Oblivion has revamped it here. It looks really cool. Love the fact that he's kind of given it those tentacle, like tail pieces like that. It very much helps to kind of continue across that kind of underwater, mutated vibe that the Barraki have. I think that's a really nice addition there, and something to do, you know, if you are building something that does have that underwater theme, kind of look into certain little features that maybe like sharks or fish or other underwater creatures or plant life or whatever have, and go, okay, well actually maybe I could put some of that stuff in my mock, you know, maybe giving them some fins or like a tail like with a dorsal fin or, you know, like a big shark fin on the back or something. That could help it look more kind of mutated and underwater monster fish-like in some fashion here, and I think that little slight addition there does a lot for that. It's pretty cool. Also like the feet design on this, using some of those Technic panel pieces. That's a really clever looking foot design. Not really something I've seen before. Looks quite nice. And this whole mock looks quite nice. Great job, Tony. On to the next one. This is by EXX Trooper and is called The Beast. So what I like about this is pretty much literally just EXX Trooper going, hey, I like Nocturne. I'm a rebuild Nocturne, but not use the original pieces, change up the color scheme, do all sorts of different stuff like that. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. You know, we were just talking before about revamping a Barraki or revamping a set. There's literally nothing wrong with recoloring a set or taking a set and approaching it from a slightly different angle, you know, giving it some slightly different weapons or a different head like this mock has here. Definitely something you could do, and it's a fun thing to do too. Of course, it's a very simple thing to do, but it could just be something that's fun, you know? And that's the other thing too. A lot of LEGO sets, actually, especially the Titans, have really, really nice frames or really nice... I guess frames is the word I'm looking for there. Yeah, they have really nice frames to them, you know. Nocturne had this awesome, forearm design, really strong and sturdy legs with the pistons in them and stuff like that, and really awesome sort of spikes going up and down the back and the neck like that. It's a really nice sort of silhouette to this mock, isn't it? And so, you know, transferring that, what the set had, and just putting it into another mock, whether that's simply recoloring it or adding a few things to it, taking a few things off, doing whatever, you're going to get something pretty cool, you know? And why reinvent the wheel? Why go, no, I want to be super cool and make this awesome four-armed custom torso. It's going to be amazing. And, Nocturne had that, but I got to do it my way. No, if you can, if you want. But, like, if it's going to be a pain to try and figure that out, maybe just do what Nocturne did and change it up a bit, or keep it exactly the same. There's nothing wrong with doing that, you know? And heck, even if you do actually want to be very different from how Nocturne did it, you may as well at least look at what Nocturne did, because maybe you might learn something and go, oh, cool, okay, that's how he did it. Well, that means, actually, I could do something similar, but slightly different. You see what you can do there. So, yeah, honestly, a lot I think you can learn from doing that. Just simply taking a set, recoloring it, or just rebuilding it at least, just sort of re-experiencing the process and going, oh, actually, you know what, there was some clever stuff going on there, you know? Yeah, I think there's a lot you can learn from that. Pretty cool. And also, how effectively does that Maxilos and forgetting my names here. But how cool does that head look on this body? I think that's awesome. Very Barraki-like, ironically. Pretty cool. I mean, they were from basically the same theme, really, so kind of makes sense, but pretty awesome. Anyway, on to the next one. This is a mock by Thida, and is called Kalma G2. So this is really the revamp episode to some degree, which, yeah, makes sense if you're addressing a Barraki-style mock. And I love this revamp. You know, I always love the idea of taking classic G1 characters and revamping them using a lot of more CCBS Hero Factory pieces. So it's just a cool thing to do, isn't it? So yeah, I love the knee design on this here, you know, specifically getting one of those prefab limb pieces like that, finding a way to connect it on the back of the lower leg there. So, if we take a little bit of a closer look here, we can see that there are some sockets and various other lift arms that are connected onto the back of that prefab limb, and then that transitions into the top of more Hero Factory limbs and stuff going into the upper legs and the waist and everything. But of course, because that prefab limb piece does actually already have that socket connection there, or the ball connection, not the socket connection, you would have an exposed ball joint up there. So what do you do with it? You put a Hero Factory piece on the top of that, and you get a cool knee design. You know, a really pronounced looking kind of knee pad almost. It's really cool. Looks really nice. So that's an interesting design and a clever way of approaching a knee in some fashion. I really like it. Another thing I really like too is the ribcage design here, using those Borok eyes like that. It very much does create this sort of... Because that was the thing with the Barraki, right, is that they were this kind of... You know, like, in the real world, you know, you look at a nice coral reef, you've got the beautiful fishes of nice colours, and they're very sort of smooth in their aesthetic and very rounded in their design. But you get deeper and down into the lower depths of the ocean, you find your squids and your sharks and your anglerfish and all sorts of scary, crazy things. And, you know, those sort of smoother aesthetics and the smoother kind of lines of those creatures become a lot more sharp, like the big pointed tips of a shark's fin or something like that, or the big pointed teeth, or the anglerfish having big old crazy teeth and stuff like that, and squid having multiple different flailing crazy arms and things like that. You know, we kind of see this here with Kalma. It's kind of getting that more, the creeps in the deep, more crazy, scary aesthetic of an underwater, place you wouldn't want to go. And I think the ribcage kind of reflects that to some degree, those sharper angles like that. And heck, just looking at the Kalma mask here, it has a lot of those sharper angles on it too, you know, those teeth, 3 teeth, 6 teeth in total, 3 and 3, and the additional 2 white teeth there. Then you got the sharper angles kind of along the chin like that, and you got all these tentacles flowing out on the back like that. Lots of sort of sharper angles there, and a little bit sort of smoother too, but it does have that sort of more rough texture to it too. So we're kind of focusing on the textures and the lines on the mock. They are a lot more sharper and a lot more kind of menacing and harder, I guess. Being a little too smooth and cutesy and smooth flowing. That's not what is creating this sort of more creepy underwater, scary aesthetic, which is very much what the Barraki nails. So I would say to kind of focus specifically on those types of lines and textures and styles on your mocks. So basically just that. If you're looking through your pieces, look for those pieces that do have kind of a more harder edge to them, and maybe not so much the stuff that is a lot more smoother. That being said, a lot of Hero Factory parts are naturally quite smooth, and they kind of work here too. They kind of do have that sort of more gelatinous, kind of like an eel or something, kind of looking a bit more sort of smooth flowing, but still having that kind of almost kind of creepy look to them. So I guess you can actually just play around with your textures and your lines and your shapes and all that sort of stuff. So really, it's up to you. And that's the thing. That's the beautiful thing about art. All the rules are meant to be broken, aren't they? So there you go. I made one argument and I immediately disproved it, and both still kind of work and both don't work at the same time. So it's pretty cool. Just see what works, play around with it, and see what you can imagine. Also love these squid arms here on Kalma. Love the fact that, the original, of course, just had those 2 orange pieces that actually originally came with Kalma. They were great pieces, very fitting for a kind of underwater tentacle kind of design. But then using these Hero Factory pieces like this, you get a very similar look, but then it's superposable as well, which is quite nice. So that's a really nice way of reinventing the wheel there. I really like it. Let's move on to the next one. This is by Sergei Rachmaninoff and is called Abyssal Weasel. So far we've focused very heavily on the actual Barraki characters. Well, I kind of wanted to move away from that a little bit and focus on just using their pieces specifically. You might be a kind of person who goes, I'm not a big fan of the Bionicle story or the characters in it. I just like using their parts and making my own characters, or maybe even making things from the real world that is completely outside of the Bionicle universe. And that's totally fine, And I think this mock is a good example of that. We take a look at the fact that this uses the Pterodac's head here. And then adding those 2 Hero Factory pieces on the sides, they're kind of giving it big puffy cheeks. Looks adorable, really cool. But also, just because those pieces naturally had, they were designed to look like they were underwater, this sort of more aquatic-looking creature like this, it very, very effectively lends itself to that. It looks perfect for what it's intended for, isn't it? Which is really cool. And I certainly think that's something to really pay attention to, is the fact of, can you use pieces that would, because that's it, right? The slogan for the Barraki was the creeps from the deep. We've talked about this a lot in this episode. It's them being these scary underwater creatures that you don't want to mess with, big bad villains that are menacing and evil looking, right? So yeah, but Barraki parts kind of very much lent themselves to being weird and being wonderful, right? Like we said at the start of the episode, all of these Barraki guys, all of them had very unique designs. None of them were alike in any way. They had custom torsos sometimes. They had different shaped torsos and backs and legs and all sorts of craziness. The toys were specifically designed with that in mind. So can you use the parts that were specifically made for that had that design purpose, and use that to your advantage on the mock? So, like we're saying, that Pterodac's head was made to look, underwater-like. It's kind of a weird verb to associate with it, but it is designed to appear that it is an underwater creature of some kind. So yeah, use that to your advantage. If you're making an underwater creature, probably a good idea to use some Barraki parts, because they were designed to have that aesthetic to them, right? So can you do that? Whether it's a Barraki or not, can you use the original design intentions of that theme of Hero Factory or Bionicle and go, well, maybe I could actually use that to my advantage on this mock? Because, the aesthetic that set was trying to capture, I'm trying to capture the same aesthetic. So maybe I should look into some of those pieces, because their shapes and the textures and the line styles of that probably works quite well with what I'm trying to intend in putting into my mock. Hopefully that makes sense to you, and hopefully that's something that could work well for what you're doing. So do that. Take a look at some older LEGO themes. Go on Brick Set, go on Brick Link. Look through all the different themes and years of Bionicle and go, for example, the Fantoga. They very much had this look of, all the Makuta in there, they had very kind of bat-like designs, very sort of menacing, evil, flying creatures. So a lot of those pieces, if you are building a bat or some sort of more menacing, evil-looking flying creature, using some of those wings or some of those masks or the other armor pieces that those guys came with could very much work to your advantage there. So yeah, study up, see what you learn. Anyway, back to the mock. Love the dark green and translight blue color scheme that this has. Those colors work beautifully together. I don't think I've ever really seen those colors used together, and man, they look great together. And also, I never realized just how effectively that beautiful glow-in-the-dark blue color that is on the Pterodox armor pieces, that flows perfectly into the translite blue armor parts too, like really, really well. So another great addition. There's some great playing around with colors here by Sergei Rakamanov. Really like what he's doing. Yeah, honestly, a lot to love about this mock. Really nice work. On to the next one. This is by Dylan Meaves and his Carapaw. So Dylan's actually made this sort of fun project that he did, which is reimagining all of the Barraki and a few other characters. But instead of building them as these menacing humanoid characters, making them into what they're originally designed to look like. So Kalma, of course, was sort of more squid-based, so he actually made Kalma into a squid. Or Carapaw here, he was more crab-like, so he actually just made him as a crab, and he did that with all the other Barraki. I won't show you all of them, but you'll have to jump onto Dylan's page and take a look at some of them, because they're very funny and very clever and very well designed too, but we're going to focus on Carapaw here. So I love Carapaw as a set, probably one of my favorite Barraki, but I think my favorite was actually probably Kalma, but Carapaw might be my second favorite. Really unique color, only ever appeared on Carapaw, but the pieces that he had, there are only ever two of them, just the head and that other armor piece there. But they were kind of used in bulk throughout him, and they're quite versatile. I've covered those parts actually quite a bit on the Bionicle Inspiration series. Every so often they've appeared, and I think they're actually just a really versatile piece that you can use, and if you have them in larger numbers, you can, I think, use it to your advantage. And I think Dylan's done that very well here. For example, the pincer design here on the crab, using the head, and then the other armor piece there is sort of the top and bottom of those pincers there. Works really well, doesn't it? They very much look like pincers. It's a really clever part use. And then we see those other Carapaw head pieces being used to form the shell on the back there, just repeating them. Man, that looks good. Oh, actually, there is a third Carapaw piece. That's right. My bad. It's the main armor part there, and he's also used that to form the kind of shell on Carapaw there, which, again, looks great, doesn't it? And then we take a look at that smaller armor piece there that's been used as feet, the little crab feet there. Looks perfect. Been used as the bottom of the pincers, other bits of armor and stuff like that. Very versatile piece and very clever part usages all round. Looks awesome. So that's it, isn't it? Just how effectively you can use any part, or specifically these Carapaw pieces, in multiple different ways on a mock. Really cool. And this is a great example of part spamming as well. Awesome to see how repeating those Carapaw head pieces like that forms this really beautiful shell, and then repeating the armor pieces there kind of along the middle of the shell too, combining that with those other head pieces. It looks really, really accurate to sort of forming this interesting shape of a crab shell like that. Looks brilliant. So I think this is a really nice example of part spamming and using pieces in multiple different ways, and some really, really clever part usages. And definitely I would argue that some of the Barraki sets really effectively lent themselves to that. Again, another piece that I've covered very heavily, and another color that I've covered very heavily in the Bionicle Inspiration series has been Pterodox's glow-in-the-dark armor pieces. Those have been on a whole bunch of different things, and those are very versatile pieces as well. And a lot of those parts pretty much exclusively came on Barraki and other Mari-themed underwater Bionicle sets. So that's very much something that you could employ in the future, and I think would be pieces that would be worth investing in, because we've seen them used countless times and in some really creative ways. So there you go. Next mock. This is by IGU and I believe is just a Jawblade revamp. So Jawblade was not a Barraki, but we're talking about underwater stuff, so I figured I'd touch upon him. Jawblade was a Hero Factory villain. This is an awesome, awesome revamp. So I love the idea of focusing on some of the other pieces that kind of naturally lend themselves to that kind of underwater aesthetic. And of course, Jawblade's mask is based off a shark, so that's perfect. It's really, really cool. Also really like the tail design here. Also quite like the weapon, kind of almost seeming to some degree resembling kind of like a harpoon or something there. I think that's pretty cool. And another thing I think is pretty cool is the dragon's piece, the dragon headpiece that is used there on the shoulder. That, of course, comes from Viking sets. There was an older LEGO theme called Vikings. They had a whole bunch of dragons in those sets, and a lot of them had that specific headpiece there. And man, that part works great for a shoulder armor piece there, and that part, even though it was not intended as a Bionicle piece, it came in a system set, works very well for your Bionicle stuff. So that's always something to consider, whether it's older sets or current sets. Look at the pieces that are in those sets if they are system, and see if there are any interesting pieces that could work very well on a CCBS mock that could fit perfectly for something as odd or weirdly specific as a shoulder armor, or you might go, oh hey, I could use that as a mask, that piece. Or some of the Hulkbuster sets have actually had basic CCBS pieces in them. You could just buy that for those funky pieces and play around with some of the other system parts that are in it too. It's an interesting, useful investment, that's for sure. See, I really like this Jawblade revamp. Super cool. Quickly, let's touch upon the final mock in this episode. And this is a submitted mock by Tyrannical Productions and is called... Oh, his name is not Tyrannical Productions. His name is Snacker777, otherwise known as Tyrannical Productions. And this is a Pterodox revamp. So I love this. I think it's super cool. Pterodox, a very awesome Barraki. And I like the spirit of this mock. Maybe you got a bit of time to kill. You want to build something quick and simple and easy. Why not just get one of your favorite sets and revamp it? It's always a fun thing to do. And whether that's a super simple revamp, just adding a few more recent pieces to it, or just shoving a few more spikes, or giving it a cool new weapon, little simple things like that, and you got something cool that you can be proud of, that's always something that's cool. Or maybe you just bought a bulk lot of Bionicle pieces, or your mate just gave you his old Bionicle collection, or you've inherited one in some way, and you're like, oh cool, there's a Pterodox mask in this. I don't think the rest of the set's in here though, that's a shame. Or maybe you've just got the mask, maybe you can just kind of build the rest of the set yourself, just using the pieces that you've got. Of course, you won't have exactly what it is. Well, maybe you will, but you can just kind of reimagine it in a new way. That could be a fun way to approach building a set that you've always wanted, but you don't quite have all the pieces for. And then you can add your own little creative input to it. That could be fun. Or maybe you like the set and you just want to add a few new pieces because you go, actually, some of these newer pieces would have worked really well on this set had it come out now when these newer pieces were available. So, for example, here we can see some of these newer Hero Factory larger claws here on the lower arms. And we also see these Hero Factory claw pieces in trans blue, which fit very well into the color scheme there. Works very nicely. So maybe, kind of updating some of your favorite sets with some slightly newer pieces just because it works really well and lends itself nicely to that set. There could be some fun little ways of playing around with a mock or a set that you really liked. Or, of course, one of the things I mentioned earlier in the episode, always love playing around with some Hero Factory pieces and mixing them in with Bionicle G1 stuff and going, you know what? Hey, this Bionicle G1 set was super cool. Can I make it in a G2 style? Because that's always something fun to do and a unique and interesting challenge. We see that here on the torso of this mock and a little bit on the upper and, well, actually on the arms and legs. It's all over this mock. It's everywhere. It's always something fun to do, isn't it? So, multiple different little fun challenges there that wouldn't take too much time. So if you're a little more stretched on time, it could be a fun little challenge you could do, and you get your Lego in for the day, have a little bit of fun doing so. It's definitely worth your while. But yeah, this is a really awesome mock that you've made here. Nice work. Always cool to see a revamp of a Barraki mock. We've seen a whole bunch of that this episode, and we've seen some great Barraki-inspired stuff. Hope you enjoyed this. I'm dropping things again. Man, I touch stuff so much when I'm recording. I got so much Lego on my desk all the time, and every time I'm like, oh, I'm recording, and I can be playing with this at the same time. And then you hear this and that, and everything's falling, and man, one day I'll learn some self-control. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to submit your own mocks to the show, you can. You can do so through the email that is appearing on your screen right now. Ba-bam! It's probably already up there. That ba-bam was premature. Or not. I don't know, maybe I timed that. We'll see. So yeah, submit some pictures, a link, some information on the mock, and one day it'll appear on the show. I recently just did another check of the amount of submissions that I have. Let me go to the folder and check. I have a hot amount of submissions right now. I have 210 that I still need to put in episodes. So have patience, my friends. 210 submissions will one day be in an episode. I promise you this. But it might take its sweet, sweet time. It might indeed. Because, yeah, how the heck can I work through 210? That's a difficult task. But I'll get there. I'm planning on doing a massive backlog of episodes. I'm going to just try and do one a day, record one episode a day for a fair bit here. So I'll work my way through them. I promise you I will. But it will take some time. So have patience, but one day it'll come. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I hope you're building something right now, in the future, very soon. And I hope you're having a good time doing so. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.